I think we should be good to go. If you happen to be watching, let me know. I'm having some weird CPU issues. Maybe just double check this because that does seem. I have a vague recollection that looking at myself in the preview doesn't have a ridiculous 1 second latency. I'm just going to quickly run an uptime here just to verify. Oh, sorry, not a. Yeah. Hmm. Chrome is an issue. Oh, there it goes. Now it's better. All right. That's weird. Anyway. Hello, fellow Sublime Text fanatics. Stream woes being what they are, I learned earlier today that there's a new version of OBS that's been officially released, and I still can't get that one to run, or I can't get it to run if I compile using Clang, which is the default compiler on my system. It does seem to work with GCC, but it does tend to be still a little bit crashy. So we're still running on the 25.0.8, but it's a part of that weird experiment. Maybe it's just head games, but it was definitely using a ton more CPU. Normally it uses like 2% CPU to encode the stream. It was using something like 40% to do this. So I think I've sorted it out now. So let's go ahead and jump into the stream. I guess we're going to continue working on YouTuberizer tonight. We're going to be doing some more work with the data request on this thing, trying to change up slowly how the caching is done so that it's done inside of the network code instead of out in the requesting code, which is sort of the proxy, if you will, into the actual, I guess, sort of a middle layer between knowing the internals of the network code and what things outside want to do to be able to get a request. And we're going to work on that and see about if we can get a bunch of stuff done on that, maybe caching somehow the results of the queries to disk. I mean, obviously, we know how to write a file to disk, but is there a mechanism we can use to easily invalidate the cache after a period of time or force it to be released or something like that? That's what we're going to play with tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and press this button down here and we're going to get rocking and rolling. I pushed the wrong button. Hang on a second. Uh-oh, that can't be good. Hmm. Well, I guess we'll just have to leave it at that. Oh, no. One tick. I remember now. That was weird. Yeah. I was playing with my interface a little bit while I was doing stuff earlier. So, hello, fellas of Text Connect. Off to a rousing start. We're here in. And we should be down there as well. I forgot. When I'm playing with the new version of OBS, I back up my configuration folder before I do so to make sure that if something unfortunate happens, I still have my good config. And I backed it up before I reset some stuff. That's why things went a little bit weird there. Things weren't quite synced up, but we're here now. Hello, working on YouTuberizer. And if you've been following the devlogs that have been going on since the last stream, well, we have been working on moving caching around in the code. And in particular, if we look in the manager file, this network manager class, there's exactly one instance of this that is created. It's responsible for maintaining a queue that we can post requests to and actually having a network thread, which it will start up as needed and shut down as needed. And it also has endpoints for doing things like checking if the current user has credentials or not. Now, we haven't really went through a ton of these. Since we're touching on all of this stuff here, seems like a good idea to go over this. Stored credentials path is referring to a path on disk in the cache folder that stores a encrypted file that contains information on the current user's credentials. Hang on a second. Got a weird tickle in the back of my throat. The stored credentials path stores the cached credentials for the current user, which is the special access token that you get for authorizing the account, refresh URI, and other related OAuth things. So when behind the scenes inside the internals of the YouTube library that we're using from Google tries to make a request. It has to pass that token along to authenticate, and the token might be rejected for being old, but it has all the information it needs to refresh that token to get a new one without having to re-ask you to be used. All that happens behind the scenes. All that information is stored in your credentials. It's encrypted on disk because anybody that has that can act as you. Although currently the password is hard coded for testing purposes, so be careful if you have to be using this at home. And then we have information on whether or not we are authorized here. Now, the magic of this is the authorized request is one that the network code inside here in this other file has a lot of requests that it can make. This is the bit where it knows where what it can do, which is currently read-only only for YouTube API version 3. This is the magic of the key that's used to encrypt the credentials. But if we were to look at this, it has the idea of this self.youtube object. This is something that YouTube library that Google creates for us. And you call get authenticated service to do that, and that is doing the business of this part here, which is getting the cached credentials, making sure that they're valid, and then if they're not valid, it opens a browser and asks you to authenticate, and then it saves the stuff to disk. But otherwise, this gives it all of the information it needs to be able to actually talk to the YouTube API, and this build method uses the information that you provided, the credentials, the API version, and the service name, which we just learned up here a moment ago is YouTube, to create dynamically an object that knows how to make requests over to there. So over here in the manager, that's what is authorized is. It asks, have we already done the step of making sure we can make a request? Because if not, then you need to ask the network code to set that object up. Otherwise, we can make requests, right? And then this is why this is so very simple. You create a request object and call into this, and it does the work of calling in if this thing is cached. Now, how this used to work, and we're sort of moving this around a little bit, is that if things are cached, a request, and I should also point out a request object if we just look at that real quick, because again, we're going to be talking about this. This is just a class that subclasses from the dictionary class. So it has the main reason for this is so that it's hashable, so that it can be used in the cache was the main reason why I came up with this. But also its get returns none, so it doesn't throw a key error. And it has a couple of known keys, the name, the handler, and the reason. And the name is references what request this is going to be. The handler is what method name in the thing that created the request later is going to get called. We can go over that. And the reason is why this request is made, which is just something that is included in the log file when we look in the YouTuberizer package thing here. But otherwise, this is just a standard dictionary, and only it's hashable, as we say. So when you create a request, you say something like, I want the channel list, and here's the arguments that I want for it. How this used to work and what we're getting away from is that when you make a request, and normally the very first time you do it, this wouldn't happen. It starts the network thread if the network thread's not already running, so that the thread just isn't always running in the background if you're not doing anything with the package, which seems like a nice way to go. And then it puts a request into the queue. Now, when we put something into the queue, we have two things that we tell the network thread. This dictionary represents the thing you want to do, and please call this function whenever the result is in, whether it's a success or a failure. And what the callback gets called with is the request that was originally made and the result of the thing. and actually gets the callback information too in this particular case, because when you create a request and call into this, you actually provided a callback, but when the network manager here puts in the request, it wraps it in its own callback that captures the information it needs to call yours, but it wants its own to be invoked first. And this is the part where we're sort of moving away from a little bit of the stuff in here. We still want this to be here for a couple of things. At the very minimum, authorize and deauthorize, because we want to track state. But for general requests, we don't want this to happen. Now, what used to happen is if the request was a success, then it would take that request object, use that as a key into the cache dictionary, and store the result of the request directly. Otherwise, it has to actually go through and make the user or it stores the result here, I should say. The next time you make the request, when you put the request in, if it can find this in the cache, then it looks it up directly. And because the request is a cacheable thing, as long as you make the exact same request as you did last time, even if it's a different object, it'll hash out the same. It'll be the key. It doesn't have to even go into the network thread. It just immediately invokes the callback saying, yeah, it worked, and here's the result. And we can do that because if a request fails, we remove a value from the cache so that the next time you make the request, it has to go again. The last thing that this thing does is keep track of if the request was authorized and deauthorized. It keeps track of the state that it uses for the is authorized item up here, and then it invokes the callback. So what we're doing here is, and I did a little bit of this earlier, and now we're going to be doing it in the stream tonight. Yeah, cool. What we're going to be doing here tonight is continuing on with this, because what we want is the caching not to happen out here in the manager. We want it to happen here inside of the network code, because the network code is the thing that actually knows what the data inside of this thing looks like. So it's best suited to manage its cache of data, because we have issues here. If I say get video link by tag, it's fetching all of the playlists, right? And then I fetch uploaded videos. That has to grab down all of the contents of this to allow me to continue. And when it does that, because I made that request, it cached the result that said, when you asked for the contents of the YouTube upload list, this is the answer that came back, which is great. That's what you want, right? And then we go back and we say, actually, we don't want uploaded videos. We want the videos from Plugin 101. Well, there's 18 videos in here. All of the videos in all these playlists count as videos that are uploaded to the channel. But when I make this request, it has to fetch playlist contents. Again, it's faster because there's only 18 things in there. There's not as many as there were before. But by the same token, why are we wasting our time making this request? Well, we already got the information for all of these videos. It should only have to backfill things. And that's not something we can currently do, but it's something we're going to work on. But very first thing, this is something that I thought prior to the stream. Now, while I was sitting here doing my final test while the countdown was going, you notice here on the playlist list, I'm not sure if this was actually done. We don't think we had this in the last stream. Hello, Ashwin. Do you remember, did we have this playlist thing going in the last stream? We were just working on tags, weren't we? This might have been something that I was working on just on my regular days. Today we're going to be working on YouTuberizer, and we're going to be working on changing some data caching around. But one thing that occurred to me while I was sitting here waiting for the stream to start, doing my final checks to make sure everything was cool. When we ask YouTube's API for information on playlists, what it gives you is a list of every playlist that's defined in the channel and information on how many items are in that thing. I don't think we have any. I don't have an example of the request, but it's a very small request, and there's information in there that says there's 13 things in here. Then you have to make a request for, playlist contents, which gives you information like this for each video in the list. And there would be many such things in here, like so. It'll tell you this is the channel ID where it came from, the name of the video, the description, thumbnails, blah, 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 and all the information that we need. But when it comes to the actual playlist itself, what it tells you by default in that request is how many items there are. When you notice uploaded videos has question mark, question mark, question mark items. That's because the uploaded videos list playlist isn't in the list of playlists that you download. It's actually in part of the channel details in this related playlists. The playlist for things you've liked as a user, things you've favorited. I don't think that's actually even a thing anymore, because liking is sort of the same as that, and your uploads. I think there should also be a watch later in here, maybe as well. I'm not sure where that might actually be conveyed. Maybe that's favorites now. But here's the ID for this playlist. There's nothing in here that tells you how many things are actually in this. So that's an issue for the ability for this to know how many things are actually uploaded on the channel. But I noticed just before the stream that one of the statistics in here for the channel is video count. And if that's the list, if that is the size of all of these, we can kind of backfill that information in. And Ashwin is asking in the chat, does the YouTube API produce a paginated response? And the answer to that is yes, for some things, not for everything. If we look in channel details, this one doesn't. Channel details, you ask it for all the channels associated with your account, and it just gives them all to you. And as far as I know, there isn't a way to paginate this particular one, presumably because there's not going to be that many channels in one account. For playlist list, this is in fact something that does this. Getting the playlists that are defined for the channel. One of the things you provide in here is the maximum number of results basically that you want to get per time you make a request out. And then part of the result that you get back, and I assume I don't have any information on it in here because I constrained this to actual useful information. Part of the response that comes back is information on a special ID for what the page that you're currently on. So that key allows it to know which segment of all of the data that's available that you're currently looking at. So in that case, you can make another request again. You make the list next item here, which I believe is something that's actually internal to the class. It knows how to change this up. And you have to give it the initial request and the response from that request so that it knows how to create a request, and then it knows to ask for the next page after this, and then it cycles and goes again. Playlist contents is a similar sort of operation. When you want to get the videos in a playlist, that's also paginated. And you can change how many each one of these things go. 50 is the maximum, so I cranked them up to 50. We're not a web page that's slowly paging you through. We need all of the results so that we can display them in the quick panel. Where this falls down weirdly is in getting requests or getting details for a video. That is a weird sort of edge case when you make the request to say, I want to get the details of a video, which, looks like this. You get one or more of these sorts of objects here. I just have one here that tells you, the ID of the video, when it was published, what channel it's on, title, description, blah, 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 all that stuff. You can do this a couple of ways. You can give it a single video ID, and then you get the details for just that one. Or you can pass it a comma-separated list of video IDs, and then you get a response back for one of every video that you provide. Weirdly, there's a limit of 50 on that, which I sort of sidled up on. It's not listed in the documentation for this thing at all, which is a little weird. But if you specify anywhere from one ID to 50 comma separated IDs, you will get 50 things back. If you provide 51, it tells you your request is invalid without explaining why. So it took a little bit to, I think I may have even mentioned that in one of the devlogs. It took a little bit of time to figure out what the heck was going on with that. And I think that was like a weekend one, because I remember doing it on the laptop out there and being like, well, what am I doing wrong that this doesn't work? Let me try that again. And then it would work in the web page and it wouldn't work here. And then I got it to work here. And that's what made me realize, wait a minute, there's like a bunch of these things. So what this is doing right now, and this is one of the things we're going to need to tweak up here, is it gets the list of every video ID in the entire playlist and then chunks it up into a list of sublists in groups of 50, and then it iterates over each one of those sublists, grabbing all of the data and sticking the results together, which works for this. But one of the things we want to do is we want to have these results cached into our cache with keyed by their video ID, so that once you look them up, this part has to be smart enough to get the whole list of things and then grab out all the ones that it already has data for and only request for the rest of them, which is the idea where, if we said get link by tag and picked uploaded videos, it fetches every video on the whole channel. And then when we go into plugin 101, it comes into this request and it's like, oh, I just have them all, and then it shoots it back and everything's good, which isn't what happens right now. I don't know how much that necessarily matters, but poise counts, as we like to say. The video details request itself here only does it the one way, and that's all the requests that we have for right now. I also have over here, oh, I can't remember. I guess it's this thing. Just temporarily, the get video link command takes a couple of different arguments, whether or not it should prompt you with tags and whether or not it should prompt you with playlists. So I've temporarily set that one to always be true, which is why no matter which way we use one of these things, we either get playlists first and then go directly to videos if we do that one, or if we pick this one, we get playlists and then we get tags. There needs to be more. I had some popcorn before the stream and now it's caught in my teeth. There needs to be more entries in the command palette for this, but I'm waiting until this part is done because I think what we might want to do here is have this command take the arguments that we have here, use tags, use playlists, so you can choose one or the other inside of the command palette. But then there would be one more argument that has a value of like copy to be able to copy a link, or view to be able to open and view the link. And if you specify one of those, as soon as you pick the video or the time code, it immediately does it. It does the copy or it does the open. Or if you don't specify that, then one last step will be a little box that one last quick panel that pops up that asks you which action you want to take. And then there doesn't have to be a ton of entries in the command palette to cover all of the possible permutations of this. And Ashwin says, can't wait for the list input handler, quick panel item support to come. Yeah, I think that's going to be awesome, not even for just for this, but to be able to have that sort of information in here as well. Would be cool. Like commands in the command palette, for example. Something they could do. I don't think it's not something we could do, but something they could do is they could actually be able to have icons in here. And maybe each one of these things is annotated with the package that it comes from or something. Or maybe we could optionally have a little bit of extra context information that tells you what argument it's using or something. I mean, there's so much cool stuff that can go on in there, let alone for our own stuff. I believe I mentioned one of the things I really want to do is this is using a quick panel right now. One of the things I was going to do, but I never really had a chance to, was swap this browser from being, instead of a quick panel, being a list input handler. But then I decided I'd really rather keep it this way because the new quick panel support allows me to put icons and mark things up in here and make that display better. Now I don't even have to worry about that. But what were we working on actually here? Because we've been going for quite a bit here, sort of discussing the modus operandi, if you will, for the changes that are to come. Now, one thing I want to double check here, if I find the appropriate, where do we want to do this? I want to do this in here. I think we want to do this in here. And this is an example of our new cache code in action. It's not the final version, but I believe I mentioned in one of the dev logs that until we have a couple of requests doing something caching and clearing caches, I don't have a good sense yet for what might work to cover all possible cases. So we're going to implement one or two more and then see what we can factor out to make life better in that regard. But we're going to do here is throw in a extra log in here. Pardon me. For this, because I'm a little curious about this. If we were to log This is be a debug log. And one of the other things I want to do is modify the log functionality to have arguments that tells you whether it's an API or an info or whatever, and then have different functions that you can invoke that sort of wrap it and memoize it and call it with the other argument. But in case of overrides, you could have quite a bit of folder and file nesting. So yeah, that was one of the things that held me back. Ashwin just mentioned in the channel there that there's a lot of folder and file nesting, and the list input handler might not be the best because of the stacking. That's why, if you remember in a stream way back, I sort of played with the idea of, I think it was in a stream, abusing a list input handler, if you will, like having it continuously ask you for another item, even though there's only one argument, and having it gather them all together as keywords. Another thing that I played with that was the actual ability to use the stack and have multiple playlist or multiple list. I guess it's the same list input handler, but it always has the same argument, and it just uses the next input handler or back in the stack to create a new instance of itself for the exact same argument, but with different data, so that when you eventually pick it, it's still one argument, which I think worked pretty well. It is kind of an abuse of the system, but then again, not really, because it does work as a stack. But clearly, there's like so much stuff going down. It's kind of tricky to get on with all that stuff. For example, someone asked, I think it was Michael Lyons asked in the channel earlier about that thing we did in a live stream a couple of months back, where the pop-up CSS and the color scheme could open up in another panel for you to edit, and then when you hit save, it writes it back into the file. I got so much stuff in my user package to clean up from all of our little experiments. Or if you really want to use it, don't show it through a stack, but dynamically update the placeholder to show the file path. That would be cool too, actually, to be able to visualize what exactly is building up in there, which is kind of something that's missing. We could sort of do that with the placeholder right now that is in the background. The the command palette doesn't show it, doesn't? But I mean, it could. Whoops. Yeah, we want that. The select playlist here, but I believe you probably mean the description thing that keeps the element on the stack and shows you what the selected thing is. The very first results. Take that. Where was that thing? Statistics.video count. Let's check this out. I might also point out that I've been kind of peeved lately that Control Escape and basically the only key combination I can find that uses Escape that isn't bound by Windows 10 to do something irritating is Shift Escape, which is bound in Sublime and in Terminus, which isn't one I want to use, but I really, I have Control Escape here to pop this panel open. So I need an example of another key binding that's as handy to push as that for opening the panel that will actually work across all operating systems. Okay. That says the channel has 99 videos. And if I check uploaded videos, it says it contains 109 items. So that's unfortunate. I was kind of hoping that the videos are actually, the number that are in the channel, but I suspect that number is the public videos. And if we scroll through this, there's one, oh shoot, it's selecting playlist, sorry. Things that are actually private or unlisted in here probably don't count against that total. And there's not something that tells you that different little bit of stuff. And see how many. It's been 2 weeks since I gathered this, I gather, since the video count was 97 before. So the question becomes, would we like to grab this video count out of here and use it, whoops, in the size of this playlist to give a sense for how many videos are in there, even though it's not actually correct? Because one of the other things I wanted to do is once you have that information on that and you get the results back, it could write it into its saved information so that it knows it for next time. Um, doesn't make sense from a usability standpoint to have this number go from 99 to 107 or whatever, or 109 as a result of going in and coming out again. That is an intriguing question. I kind of like the idea of that, at least the other part of this. I'll leave that there for the time being. That would be in get video link, right? Let's bloop that over here so we can work on it a little bit. We'll move manager over here in case we need to refer to it, but I don't think we will. The way this works now, it requests channel details, it stores that value and makes its own pretend version of the playlist, the uploads playlist, based on this. So because this sort of mimics the response that you get when you ask for playlist details, so that we can inject the uploads playlist into the list of things. As we can see here, it grabs all the playlists, sorts them by title, and then inserts the uploads playlist as the first item in that list to make sure that it always appears at the top. But one thing we could do here is say self.uploads playlist, and then the thing that we want there is content details dot item count, and we could set it to self.channel of that other bit there, which was statistics.video count. Thusly, so what that would do is if we pick this, assuming I didn't break it, the uploaded videos now says that it has 99 items in it, which isn't technically correct. But we don't actually fetch the contents until we go in, and then when we go back. So what we could also do here, copy that. The result of getting channel details, if we're using playlists, is to request playlist list, which is this one, which sets up this data. And then when you select a playlist, it does pick playlist, which is this one, which makes the request for playlist contents, and playlist contents is this one. So this is the one where the contents of a playlist actually pops up for us to be able to do something. And as a result of that, what we could do here, that's just the videos sorted by that. I guess we would need information. We'd have to store the list of playlists too. The idea being that once we gather this back, we have the list of videos as a part of the sorted list of things. We know how many there actually are, and then we could update our playlist, our upload playlist to that, assuming that this was the thing we actually asked for, right? And I think we could actually do that. Let's see. If we follow this through, channel details asks for the playlist list. Playlist list asks for this, and it uses playlist ID from the item in its request. So we could say here if, whoops, And this particular thing is the reason why I originally envisioned that all of the handlers for any request would get the results, but they'd also get the request object that they actually use to make the request, because I knew that we were going to be maybe putting one parameter in one time and a different parameter another time, and you want to be able to distinguish based on that what the results are, for example. Um, Hang on, let me tweak that up a little bit. That's getting on my nerves. Um, so if the request ID is equal to self dot uploads playlist ID, then we might say its content. Oops, need the string. Its content details dot item count is equal to the length of the result. I think that's what we want. I didn't save that. Hang on. So let's see. We pick this. Uploaded video says 99. If we go in, we come out, still 99, huh? Maybe we should put a log in there. Let's do this. Oops. Oh, it wasn't ID, was it? It was playlist. No, it was, yeah, the argument thing is playlist ID. That's probably my issue. If the playlist ID is equal to that. Let's try that first, and then we'll see what we get. Whoops. And let's see, that's 99. We go in, and oh, wow, that also updated rather slowly too. I have a feeling I have some weird action going on with my video card. Ashton says the recent VS Code release actually introduces an extension bisect feature where it uses binary search to disable extensions for troubleshooting. I think package dev has nascent support for that, but it's not fully implemented because there's an issue on the tracker about how Sublime crashes if you try to ignore too many files at once or too many packages at once. It was one of those things that was on my list of stuff to play around with, and then before I got around to it, it was mentioned that package dev has he wrote the ability to do that, and then discovered that if you have a lot of packages installed, if you pick half of them and put them in ignored packages, it ends up crashing. Um, hmm. Whoops, so why did I do that? I don't need that part. I think that's what we need. My bad. That is a cool idea, though. My original idea for that was as a response to the people that have a problem with Sublime, and you always say revert to a freshly installed state. Does that seem to fix the problem? Okay, now you need to narrow in on what's actually wrong, which thing is causing it, and that part's always tricky to explain. And I thought, hey, if there was a way to do that, that would be cool. And then it turned out, no, been there, done that. I think that issue might actually be res- resolved now. Oh, I guess if I actually save the file before I reload it, then something would actually happen. Um, I, oh man, this I'm thinking of something else, but I seem to recall uh, something vaguely about that seemed like it might help. Maybe I'm thinking of some stuff Ben did to package control, where in some cases it could fail in a catastrophic fashion. Uh, 99 didn't crash. 109. Yeah, all right. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's not great, but if it's not going to give you a list of, I should actually, now that I mention it, hang on. I closed it up. But if we were to just look in the channel information here, let me hide my face for a second. That's this one. So we can see the whole shebang here for a moment. We were looking at the channel information. That's this one, channel list. Common use cases, list by my channel, like so. Oh, I guess we sort of needed the other part of that, didn't we? Whoops, missed it. The overview is the bit for this. Representation of all of the stuff that you can snag out of one of these things. Related playlists like favorite, video count, and that seems to be it. See if it has a specific mention of the number of public videos uploaded to the channel. Yeah. All right, so yeah, there's no way to get this information in any other way other than what we're doing here, or alternatively saying whenever we get the uploads playlist to fetch all the details down. And I don't know that that's strictly necessary, because if you knew exactly what playlist you were going into, you don't need to download information on 109 things just to get the 18 that you're actually interested in. But let's see. Maybe we change that. Make that public videos, which is kind of what we want to have there. We're going to stage that hunk. We're only going to stage this line, which says that set the item count of this based on the public video count on load. Maybe we even throw a quick comment in there to say what's happening. Populated it with the public video count. The count will be adjusted later if when the user browses into the uploads playlist. And then this would be, definitely don't want that, but we do want this. Update the video count to include public and, oh, sorry. We'll just say non-public videos because there's a bunch of different ways that that can go. So we don't want that, but we do say when we get the channel details, make the little fake playlist there. So we'll stage those lines and we'll stage that hunk. And we don't need to change anything there. So what we're changing is displaying how many public videos the channel has. Oh, I guess I need to change that slightly. Hang on. We want to grab this and we want to grab this. And then we can snag this one out and use this thing and this thing. Add a colon. Tighten that back up a little bit just so we can see when we get a video link. Public video count for that channel is 99. So that'll do for now. We might want to change that to be ODAT Nerd Sublime Text Tutorials 99 public videos, but I don't know what the actual format of that is going to be. We're undoubtedly going to fool around with it when we get to that point, so there's not any need to concern ourselves too much with that right now. So we don't want that. We do want this. So what we're committing is the fact that we update the video update playlist and that. So use channel public videos for uploads playlist size. We'll change it this way. Use public count, video count for uploads playlist size is what we want for that, and save that out. And I'll go back and tweak that message up later as deemed appropriate for everything. So that's that bit there. We have channel details done. And then the next thing I was going to work on after that was the playlist list item here, which isn't caching anything yet, but kind of needs to for, well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to, but makes sense to, I guess, is the way to go with that. Um, I'm thinking though that right now what we're storing in the cache is the details of I called this channel details, but what it's actually invoking is channels list. But there's not a way, unlike playlists, there's not a thing that gives you the list of channels and then another one you use to get the details of the channel. Instead, this is the thing that just gives you all of the information here on the thing. So one of the things in here is the channel ID, which we might need for other things. So we don't have a request for it. We might want to change this to channel list. And then because channel details is kind of a different thing. So let's say if this was channel list, I think, before we get too far on that, let's double check. When we ask for the list of the playlist list, we're getting a list of playlists, and then we call playlist contents. So I think it makes sense to change the name of this the same. So let's go ahead and copy that. This is going to appear a bunch of times in this. So we might want that one for the request and that and for the name and for all of those values. Adding it to the cache. Yes, we want to change all of those. And not in not in networking. A couple of things need to change here. Those two. Oh yeah, I guess I need to manually select this one and paste that in. And the other one is going to be over in get video link as well. And again, we need to select it first to make sure that Control D picks up sub things. And if we did that search one more time, we don't come up with any, so that's good. Now let's quit this and restart it to make absolutely for certain that we are 100% in the state that we expect to be. Oops. And if we open, oops, that, okay, got a cache miss on the data. Then we upload to playlist. Still works. Cancel out. Whoops. Don't do that. And then if we did it again, it says returning cache data and gives us the answer directly. So that's one part of the change that we actually want to do here. And again, we got to double check all these things. We definitely want that one. We definitely want that one. List, 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 list. We definitely want that hunk and that hunk. And here, yeah, we want those lines. Whoops. I want to stage those. And for this, these two we want to stage inside of get video link, but not that one because that's sort of hard coded for right now. So if we look at the things that are checked in, everything seems to be okay. Change request for channel list. Oh, oops. Channel, not Chanel. It's not perfume. We want to go like that. Okay, and then that allows us to come back in here. We'll just double check that that doesn't actually appear anywhere. Because we're going to do a little something here. This is a real kind of chicken and egg situation. Let's see. We might say, given a channel ID, obtain the specifics about that particular channel. Now, an issue with this, such as it is that what do we do if you invoke this? The thing we're going to do here is say, for example, log API fetching channel details. What we'd actually want to have in here first, which isn't done in here because it doesn't take any arguments, is self dot validate. Is that what I called that thing? Yes. For this request, the list of needed items is channel ID. This will cause the request to throw an error if you invoke it without the channel ID, which allows everything after this to actually say what it is that it's doing. So that compiles. That's good. We can actually make this generate an error if we want to. For now, let's go ahead and copy this and tie it into the overall request system, which is just as easy as this. The request named this is deferred to a method which uncoincidentally has the exact same name. And then in get video link, when we say authorized, what we're going to change here is self.request. And the thing we're going to request is channel details. And if that's the only thing we put in here, what we're going to do is grab this. So we copy paste that and say channel ID is equal to this, but comment that one out. This first one should complain that you would have thought that the request doesn't work. Did I add that in the wrong place? No, I did not. Oh, it doesn't. It's not doing this. It's automatically validating because we're already authorized. I think that's the issue there. Let's see. Oh, now there it is. It is generating an error, but it's not letting it stop because you can queue up multiple requests if you want. So in channel details, it's missing a required argument channel ID. So that's cool, and we could do something like this instead. And now, whoops, don't use build for that, bro. That's not going to do what you want. You want this. Now it's mad. It actually got a response. Didn't actually do anything, but this sort of ties into how this actually works behind the scenes. The YouTube helper or the YouTube request thing that we have here, which is where we get that self.request method from. If we look inside of it, it calls YouTube request, and the handler that it gives is basically whatever value you pass here, which is almost always none. And the result of that is it ends up being the name of the request with an underscore. And when we get a result back from this thing, the handler code actually calls the method with the underscore in the name. So it calls this one if there's an error. Otherwise, it calls an underscored method for the name of the thing. That's why when we make the request for channel list, the method is named underscore channel list. There's an implicit connection there between what the request was made when looked like when it was made and how it ultimately gets processed there. Now it's mad that there isn't actually one of those things. We'd have to actually put it in the thing. So the next thing, we could actually just say channel details for self and request and result and pass it. I guess we could actually just say here print. Well, let's actually print the actual result of that operation. That'll be enough for us here. So if we reload this, when I make this request, it says none because that's what the return value of that thing is. And of course, it did display us an error in the panel to tell us that that was the case. Or it cached the result, rather. Hello, Ben. It's going not too shabby. We've sort of just been going through the weird, intricate internals of this thing that I originally set up way back when, and we're slowly making it smarter. And also in the chat discussing how cool it's going to be when we get our hands on that juicy new build where the list input handlers can use quick panel items so we can get icons and extra annotations and details in the quick panel or in the command palette, and how exciting that would be. How's things going with you? Are you having fun playing with sending? Did you? I was going to say actually playing with, but did you set yourself up a pretend Zoom call so that you could use the new functionality in the new version of OBS to use it as a virtual camera? The one time being in a Zoom is actually fun and exciting. I never got as far as playing with that because it worked for a while and then sporadically crashed when I interacted with the UI too much, and that's not the level of stability that I'm interested in playing with on stream day of all things. Goes without saying that if at any point during a live stream I just magically disappear, I'll be back in the time it takes to restart OBS. I don't know how that actually works for the stream per se, but okay, so it actually said that in the API that that's what it was doing, right? Fetching channel details for is what it said. Now, how come the return value of this is none? That's what we got. Oh, right. Because this is an example of one of these. Oh, Hangouts on the first try. Cool. I haven't actually used. Is Hangouts still a thing? Did it change its name to something else? I remember there's a YouTuber named Scott Manley. Scottish guy, does a lot of space stuff. Played a lot of Kerbal Space Program, which is how I got into him. For a long time, he did regular Google Hangouts playing the game, and people could watch. And then eventually, he sort of switched to live streaming. And I got the sense that Hangouts sort of went away for the at least in the incarnation that it was there. But at the time, I wasn't interested in live streaming anything. So the thing that we ran into here is that currently there's caching happening inside of the network manager, and we're slowly trying to transition it to doing all of the caching here in the network code. So as we do that, we need to augment this list with requests that we're co-opting the hashing for or the caching for, I should say, until we've done all of them, and then this part can be updated to change. Maybe it's called meet now. Oh, that could be, yeah. That sounds familiar. I notice a lot of things have little buttons now. Like Facebook keeps harassing me to open a room and chat with people. I'm like, I don't chat with people on Facebook. Facebook is where I go to see what my aunts and uncles and cousins are doing. If I wanted to talk to them, I talk to them on the phone. Um, Now, here's where we sort of run into an issue. There's no request per se to actually fetch the details of a channel except for this one. Um, but what they could do, yeah, Scott Manley is quite awesome. I'm not sure he actually still plays Kerbal Space Program as much anymore. Um, all the videos that I've seen of his of late are just sort of covering, NASA and SpaceX and stuff like that. But I actually extra tickled to find him on YouTube, and he's for a long period when I was like really into Kerbal Space Program, he was like the go-to channel, and I realized a big fan of books by Anne McCaffrey. She does the Dragon Riders of Pern series. I mean, well, she did. She has passed on now. But in one of the later novels, I mean, the overall plot of the books is basically that there's a planet far away and humans went there 2,500 years ago and genetically engineered some dragons, and they lived there so long they lost knowledge of their forebears, and it's sort of an agrarian society, but there's a spacefaring menace that falls from the skies every 50 years, so they use the dragons to protect themselves. And in one of those books, there was a bit where an asteroid hits the planet, and they're actually sort of tracking it a little bit, and they know what, and they have to deal with the aftermath. And Anne McCaffrey, the author of that, actually hired somebody from the Scottish Observatory, whatever it's called there, to give her information on if there was an asteroid coming, what would it look like? How would you talk about that? What would the effects of it be based on the size? How big would it have to be to have this effect and not that effect and be plausibly believable? And Scott Manley was the guy that actually did that. And I didn't realize watched him in Kerbal Space Program and stuff, and Ben's mentioning everyone's waiting for a Kerbal Space Program too. Yeah, that is, I actually bought a joystick for that thing, or Kerbal Space Program rather. But yeah, that's going to be like cool. I've never really gotten very good at landing on things, but it's a hell of a lot of fun to try. But after watching a ton of Scott Manley videos, I happened to be rereading that book, and then I realized that that blurb at the front of the book was actually by him. And for some reason, there was just like a level of excitement there that, I've seen that guy talking about a game I played, and he's also a part of this book series I really like. Okay, here's what we're going to say. We need cache information for the information on a channel. Um, by ID. So ultimately, we want something like self.cache. I don't have, well, I guess we might call it channel details, and then the actual channel ID. How do we want to do this? Um, is it a safe assumption that the unique ID for a channel is unique amongst all channels, but also amongst all videos and all playlists? I mean, knowing Google, I would imagine the answer to that is yes, but I don't think that's actually the ID that YouTube uses to uniquely identify the channel. Yeah, that doesn't really say one way or the other, does it? Hmm. Let's go up here for a second. um, bu- 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 the information on fetched channel details. This object is keyed on channel IDs, with the value being the details for that channel, let's say. So that would actually be, let's say, the thing we're adding is channel details, and it would be an object like yaw if we wanted it to be. And why am I? Huh. For reasons I don't recall, I decided that I didn't want that to actually be directly inside of this. It checks the key directly for those ones so that it can delete the key or return the value of the key. So I'm guessing we probably actually want this one to be set in there, and there just won't be anything in it, right? And I think that also means that in this, we're going to end up needing to do something like that. Whoops, putting that inside there, I should say. So maybe we actually want something like this. Go away, you. And then we can throw this part in here. And that's going to allow us to, did I document all of these things? I did, didn't I? This should actually then be self dot init cache, like so. And then every time that happens, it'll be done the same way. Okay. Set up our internal cache object to be empty and ready to track the results, whoops, of our data requests. If you're going to write a comment, it might as well be simplistic, right? Have you ever played, and I can't remember the name of it, it's got rocket in the name. It's something very similar to KSP in spirit, designing a rocket to, I don't think go to space, but just see how long you can get it to fly. I remember seeing it as a tablet game. I want to say it's called like Rocket Science or Rocket Flight or something. Um, it's one of those things that was totally on my list of things to get into, and I never really got around to it. I also have another game on Steam that uses the same sort of Newtonian physics simulation as KSP does, only it's not 3D, and it has you being top down on the solar system, orbiting around a planet, and you do maneuvers to change your orbits, and you have to understand orbital mechanics enough to be able to be, caught in various things to transfer around. I can't remember what that's called either, but it was quite cool. And then that's rather old as a game now. It's probably like being updated and stuff. When I originally started playing it, it was in early access, so it had simplistic programmer art and it worked great. And my laptop at the time was really underpowered. And then when you hit the next stage of development, it went into like full Unity 3D top down renderings of things, and my computer couldn't handle it anymore. And then I never really got back to it. Um, so let's see. If request channel ID is in the self.cache of channel details, then I guess we would say the same stuff down here. If request refresh. Let's copy that part out. Clearing. Now here's the thing. I'm just thinking here. The way that I'm going to implement this, I think, because there's not actually a request to do this, is that if it's in the cache, return it. Otherwise, invoke this to get the list of channels out of this thing, and then get the result back from that. So if that's the case, maybe we do this the same as here. Exactly the same as here. Yeah. The idea being in this one, if it can look it up, I mean, it should use different. My dog is barking out there. Simple rockets. I think that might be the thing. Yeah. I actually saw like there might even be a third one that I'm thinking of, unless I'm thinking of the same thing. I remember one on the phone where the rockets had round parts and they tended to tip and fall over on the launch pad before you could launch them, but I might be conflating those two things. You remember way back when Flappy Bird was a gigantic phenomenon? Somebody actually created a version of Flappy Bird that was like Flappy Space Bird. So there was a planet, and you would start flapping until you got up into orbit. And then once you got there, you'd be in a stable orbit and flapping around. And then you get another bird to launch into orbit. And the idea was to see how many of them you could get orbiting around without hitting anything. It was quite cool. And Ben says, as far as I know, it's only 2D. It does have multiple planets and similar simulation. Yeah, that I think that's the thing that I can't remember if that was like top on or I want to say side on because I'm thinking in my head of seeing Scott Manley play it, where you can see the ascent and the angle that it's taking for escape velocity from the side, and then I'm not sure what happens after that. I think if there's like a game that is space related, we've probably seen Scott Manley play it at some point. Like I think there's something called Satellite Mechanic that has you launch into space and then come back. Oh right, I forgot to turn that back on, didn't I? Pardon me. Let me go. Hang on. Sorry about that. We were doing some stuff with some documentation, and I forgot that I turned the face off. Is my face down in this corner really adding that much detail to this thing? For a change, when I manipulate stuff in this bottom right corner, you'd actually see what's going on in there. Interesting that I actually had an idea for a button in here that would switch the camera. Like I can also jump myself around in the screen now if I want to, or right in the middle if I want to be the tiniest little thing. I had the idea while I was implementing that of having a timer version of it, so you could jump yourself to a corner and then or hide or show, and then have it after a period of time automatically bring it back. Because one of the things I'd like to do, instead of having one of these here like this, is have a browser capture on my other desktop just to keep things cleaner and then swap the scene to that. But I'm terrible, as you just saw, with actually swapping the scene back to the right place. But I think that automatically did that based on focus changing after a time period, I think would be pretty cool. How's the audio, by the way? Still sounding as loud as needs be? I'm waiting for something exciting to happen so I can use the new drops again. Oh, I noticed when it plays back, it doesn't quite have the right timing for one of them when it seemed to in the editor. I need to tweak that a little bit. Okay, so here's the idea. We call channel details. If channel ID is in the list of channel details, then if we requested a refresh, delete the channel cache entirely, which is the thing from this. Otherwise, we return the channel ID of channel ID, like so. Ah, cool. Audio is good and clear. That's what we like to hear. Incidentally, speaking of good and clear, today was my last day of work for the next couple of weeks. I'm officially on vacation until the 29th of December. Although I probably need to put in a little bit of time tomorrow just on my own because there was something I wanted to get done today to help some of my other fellow coworkers out before I go away, and I didn't quite get it done. But things are looking up in the exciting land of being able to play with this more maybe, or do more streams maybe, or maybe I'll just help my wife bake a bunch of cookies. Okay, so oh, we need to fashion a request for this bad boy. Shoot. Um, Huzzah indeed. Oh, hey, I never even thought of that. Check it out. Oh, there's also Outer Wilds. It's got n-body physics, but doesn't allow you to build anything. That's actually not that much of a deal breaker. That's also reminding me, and I wish I had a better memory for names of these things. I found it was a definitely a 2D top-down vector game with orbital mechanics type stuff. Um, and there was like a few planets around, and its claim to fame was there was, and it was like in early access or a proof of concept kind of thing. So I don't think it was fully done. I don't know if the guy ever went back and did more on it. But its claim to fame was that it was actually written. Well, it might have been written in Love 2D, which is something that Ashwin has mentioned previously as something he wants to get into. Or if not, it definitely had Lua built in as its scripting engine, so to say. But the scripting engine actually was the pilot for the capsule. So it had an interesting story where the controls for your ship where you could angle one way or the other and make a thrust or not to try to get to some place, and then when you landed there it was sort of like a little text adventure. You could talk to people and they would give you information that you could use to add into the code of your ship to help you auto navigate and stuff. It was really quite interesting. The other thing that's kind of fun to just sort of play with in general principles is Universe Sandbox. Although there's not necessarily so much of a game there as playing with the idea of what would happen if the Earth had 15 moons and such like that. Doing orbital mechanic-y type stuff reminds me of the good old days when I used to understand physics better, back when I was going to be an electrical engineer. We need to create a request object. We need to create a request object, and we can create a request object. We very much can create a request object. It's going to be interesting to see how well this all works here. Let's jump this over here for a second. What's the constructor of this thing look like? The name of the request that we want is going to be channel list. And we don't need anything else. We don't even need a callback for this thing. Oh, but we do. No, this doesn't take any arguments. So following the quote unquote logical flow of this, the very first time you call channel details, if it's the first thing that ever happens, you ask it, is the channel ID that was provided in the cache under channel details? And it's going to say no because nothing's been requested yet. So it makes a call to channel list, which is this one down here, which actually makes the channel request, grabs the result, sticks it into the cache, all that stuff. If there's an error, it'll raise an error out of here and jump all the way back to the place where channel details was called. So we don't need to worry about catching any errors here. And once this is done, then we have the actual information that we're interested in doing something with. And in fact, we don't even have to capture the result of this because we're going to do this in a twofold manner here. Well, actually, for our purposes here, just to verify that this will work, let's actually do that. Let's say this. For our purposes, we'll say self.cache of channel list is the thing that channel details for this one, pardon me. And I broke that one too. Oh, did I call it channel? No, it should be that, pardon me. In the cache for channel details, that's the thing that I named that up here, right? Yeah. Name the cache elements after the request. Life will be a little bit easier. For request channel ID, for our purposes, we'll just cram it result 0 because we know it's only ever going to be the one thing. And then return result 0. So you call channel details. It says, is this channel ID in the list of the cached items for channel details? It's not because this is the very first request that's ever been made. So it calls channel list to capture the result. That's going to either raise an error, in which case we don't care because that automatically carries back to the thing that happens down here in the exec blah de blah thing here, way down handle request. It captures the error and triggers that this is done so that the other thread will pick the thing out of the queue and it'll be good to go after it's crammed the error messages in there. Whoops. Oh, shoot. I went down too far. Let's do that. Otherwise, it actually gets a result. So just temporarily in the channel details, it's going to use the request ID that it got to store the very first item in there because we're assuming there's only ever one channel in this thing and return it back. The next time you call it, the channel ID is in there because we just added it, assuming I did that correctly. We don't specify refresh, so it returns it. And the reason why this is clearing the channel cache is because if you wanted to clear the cache for this, what it actually is going to have to do in order to refresh everything is to make this request anyway. So it might as well drop this cache so that it has to redo this. The other way to do that would be to just remove this one channel ID out of here. But then when we invoked this method, we would probably want to cast call refresh on it as well, or make this one smart enough to only backfill things. But that doesn't seem like a good idea. So does this thing even compile? Let's see what happens. Oh, I should actually change this for channel cache in ID, return cache data, in ID, and then this is going to be a cache miss as well, which is something I also stuck in there so that we can tell exactly what this thing is doing. So let's see what we get. Let's see, requesting authorization, fetching channel details for this, cache miss on the channel data in ID. So it fetched the channel details, got a cache miss on channel data in the actual channel data. Then it retrieved information for one channel, which was that one. Then it cached the response, fetched the details, and got the cache data. This is the other version of that thing being called, and everything seemed to work just fine. And then if we do it again, probably should have scrolled that down a little bit. Fetching, cache channel response, fetching channel details, returning cached data. So, oh, but it didn't say in ID, did it? Huh. Maybe we better double check this business that all of these things say something that we expect them to say. In ID, in ID, in ID. Yes, and those ones, yeah, okay. Let's double check that. Oh, I still have a print in here somewhere that I don't necessarily want. Is it doing that every time? Oh, that's over here, isn't it? Okay, don't do that. Okay, I think we also need a command in this thing to clear the log here for testing purposes. Okay. Loaded it, launched the thread, requested authorization, fetched channel details for a very specific channel, which we hard coded in there. Oh, the other thing I think for testing purposes, we should turn that one off too, because that one is making the request after the first one. I think that's why that sort of went a little hard to trace. Okay. Cache mesh on the channel data in ID, so it fetches the channel details, which is going to be, oh, I need to be back in this file here, pardon me. And it calls this one fetching channel details for channel. That's the one we called. Cache mesh, cache, can't talk. Cache miss on channel data in ID, which is this one. Then we see it calling fetching channel details, which is that. And then there's a cache miss on the channel data, so it actually fetches information for one channel, which is that channel with that many videos. And then it says that it actually cached the response of that thing, which is cool. That's what we want. Fortunately, we can't type in this thing. Now I'm going to do it again. And what do we get? Did that blow up? It did blow up. Shoot. Oh, in Package Manager? Well, that can't be, what did I do? Or sorry, in the File Manager? That's not doing squat, huh? Oh, it is, yeah, it's derp. I was expecting to see more results because there was more results last time because I stupidly did that thing. Fetching channel details for returning cached ID. So that seems to be working. Every time I do that, it is caching that ID up, which is great. Okay, so I think that works for what we wanted to do here. In order to get this to actually do the full thing, we want to do this. So that when we get the actual information, then we call get channel information. And now we should see it actually saying that it has a cached response for it when it does it. And we can doubly verify that everything works. So there's the list of stuff. And if we check in here, launch the thread, requested, fetching channel details. There was a cache miss on the channel data in ID, so it fetched the channel details, and when it tried to do that, there was no data in the cache for it. So it retrieved information for one channel, which is that one. Then it cached the response. And once that was done, it actually did this part where it requests the channel list and it's cached, and it just immediately goes on to the next part. So that 100% does what we want for that part. Now the next thing to do is actually implement this the way that is more or less intended, which is, we copy this. Down here, we want to, oh, sorry, we'll do that a different way. because we want to cache the whole response, but we also want to cache each of the channels from the result. Which is probably going to be an ID in there, is equal to, I think this is how we want this to work. We want to store the whole result, and this is why I wanted to do this. My wife must be uploading pictures. This is why I wanted to do this inside of the network code here and not out in the network manager in this code over here, because this is all about proxying requests in and handling them when they come back without knowing what's actually inside of them. This is the code that knows exactly what to expect inside of here. So this is the place where we say, yeah, let's go ahead and cache this entire channel data, and then also fetch the ID details and store them in here too. And that's why this one is going to pull them out of there. So we don't have to catch the result of this as we did previously. We just need to do that, and then we return, whoops, self. Make it smart, right? If request channel ID is in the self.cache of channel details, then return self.cache channel details request. And I'm going to fix this in a second because this is ridiculous. Otherwise, there's an error. What do we do here? Raise an error. Am I raising any errors anywhere else in here? Oops. Don't do that. Kinda. Really seems like it should be one of those bad boys, but yeah. I think that's what we want for that. Okay. Here we don't have to worry about that because if there wasn't a result, it would have thrown an error. I actually verified this. This is a list of channels. Again, I don't know in what situation you could have more than one channel associated with this, because my Google account has this channel and also my other channel, which is linked down in the description below if you want tutorials, and you didn't already know that when you're watching this. But that's on a brand account so that I could have a different name. And I think I've experimented with trying to start another channel just for testing purposes, maybe even on this. And it wants you to make a brand account, which means that it doesn't show up. These two channels don't show up together when I log in. I have to specifically tell YouTube's auth mechanism which one of those things I want. So I don't know in what situation this could return more than one, unless you're in that situation where you're a network, that those things that gather up YouTubers and share resources and stuff, because there is some stuff in here for doing something on behalf of someone else. I think that might be why, which is outside of my particular use case. But I did verify that if you do this on a Google account that doesn't have a YouTube channel, it doesn't return an empty list. It throws an error and tells you that there's no channels. That's why this raises key error here. As a matter of fact, maybe that's what I should be doing here. I think that was sort of the thing I was kind of looking for. One of the things that sort of spun me off for a little bit on the one of the Devember days was what exception to actually use for this. Is it a runtime error? Kinda. But it seems like it kind of is a key error because you're specifically asking for something that doesn't exist. So we might say this. No channel with ID found. Request channel ID. Okay, so let's test that theory. That all works. If we came back over here and just sort of added a question mark to the end of this thing to make it invalid. Whoops, don't save it. Reload it. So, yeah, thanks. It fetches the channel information and then it says in channel details. Oh, crunk. What did I do? Oh, right. What did I do? Huh. Oh, what's that? Oh, yeah, that was that time I accidentally tried to run the plugin. That's unlikely to be interesting. In channel detail. Well, I mean, it says in channel details, but that could just as easily be the stuff that I added down here to cache this thing. Just to verify. Whoops, don't do that. I meant to do that. So this is doing what we expect. It raises an error that there's no channel with that ID, and then the code is -1. So that part works. So let's just figure out why the other part is kind of quirky, because I clearly am caching it incorrectly. We'll set this back to here so we can test it actually working. That's going to be dot channel for channel in response item. So we should end up with a list of channels in here. And the channel details dictionary at the key result ID, which should be that. Well, we'll piecemeal it out, shall we? Okay. Ba, ba, ba. Kind of course. In what universe would it not decide to put the ID thing way at the end instead of at the beginning just because it's all in one long line and I'm hoping to be able to look at it. Instead, it's the very last thing. It is in fact ID in the outer thing, which is correct. So, oh, I guess maybe that. Let's not be an idiot and index the array by the name because we actually want it to be doing it that way. Alrighty. I think we got something here, guys. Okay, that's working. And fetching channel details for cache miss. Boop, boop, boo. Fetching channel details. Bang. So yeah, this is sort of obtuse because of the way that we're testing out this actually working. But that does, in fact, actually work the way that we want it to. Perfect. More verbose than we might actually want this to be. No ID available. Okay. I guess we don't need a comment on that. I think it's pretty obvious when we raise a key error that says no channel with ID found that we're doing it because that thing doesn't exist, right? So here's what we're gonna do for this because I'm gonna go quietly insane. Otherwise, channel ID is equal to request channel ID. And then I'm going to copy this and say this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one are channel ID. If the channel ID is in there, then clear it. Otherwise, get it. Boy, doesn't that look nicer already? And we're starting to get a sense for what an abstraction for this might look like, because we can assume that we're going to always use self.cache. We need to pass the top level key and whatever to index inside of it in some fashion. If anything, maybe we don't pass anything there to get the value back. So we now have the ability to look up channel details, which proxies to channel list, which is why these why these lines here are utilizing the cache for channel list. So I think that is all in a state of workingness. So let's stage. Oh wait, no, as a part of this we added that, right? Yeah. Mm, whenever we do this in stages here, can we stage just this and just this? Is there another call to init cache in here? Deauthenticate calls it and init calls it. And then it's actually there. So, okay. We also then want this. Stage that one. Just those lines. So what do we have staged here? The fact that we moved the cache configuration out of there and into here. Unfortunately, we're also pulling that in too. So that's either a rebase operation later to split that part out and add it to something else, or we don't care about that for the purposes of this and say change where the cache initializes. Clarity, and hit enter on that one, so we're good to go. We absolutely want nothing in this as part of this test. And here, channel details, we want to stage that. And here's channel details, we want that. Here's channel details, we want that. And this. Okay, so like so. Beauty. And the idea for that, because technically we don't need it per se so far, but when we open one of those details things, one of the things that it grabs is and stores is or could store, I can't remember if it does right now, it stores the video ID for sure, but we could also store the channel ID in there as well. I think is something that if it's not doing it, it needs to do it for later purposes. And in that case, you want to be able to have commands inside of the editor portion of that we haven't written yet be able to say, I wanted information on this, or I want to save to this. I need to first get the information on this channel, and it can ask for it by the channel ID, and then it'll automatically do all of the magic proxy stuff to gather that information instead of having to roundabout make the request and then ask, just because it seems clearer in the code, more or less. Next up, and I think we're pretty much I guess not. Playlists are not currently cached, but they could be. So we're validating it, so that's good. We need a channel ID for these things, and that's verified there. Now we need to work on this. So here's where we would say init in the cache. We need an entry for this. We're coming up on time. We're going to say this is also going to be dictionary. This object is keyed on channel IDs, with the value being a list of all playlists that appear on that channel. Ah, I think I also remembered the other reason that we want to be able to do this, which is that the reason why we wanted playlist information to be keyed on channel information is if we can get information on channels, then we can gather that information that we used earlier in the video to snag the list of, no, I can't remember where it was now. It was in here, right? Video count for, or at least put the uploads playlist in there with the appropriate information so that the other thing doesn't have to do it. That's going to be another phase though. So there's that. So playlist list is the cachy bit of that bad boy. And then we find this. Let's snag all of this out and place it in here. And it happens in here before everything, right? Yes, it does. Clearing. Now, do we only clear the playlist cache for the specific channel? I'm going to say yes. And the other thing we didn't, because we're assuming that all of the channels need to be associated with one user. I have nascent ideas in the back of my brain that what we want to be able to do is authenticate twice, once say for this channel here and one for the other one, and then have that as a choice when you take options. But I want to get everything else working first before I delve into that, because it should be fairly simplistic, which is another reason why the entry point to all of this stuff is knowing an actual channel ID for something instead of just assuming mine, which is one of the things that I changed here. Oh, did I do something special for? No, I did not. But we need to. If we were told, did I do something special there? I had a thought. No. Yeah. If channel ID is in the thing, yeah. Okay, we might need to do that same channel ID jiggy that we did for this thing, just to make this a little bit nicer to look at. Playlist list. Okay. Copy that and then say that one and that one. Only ones. Hear this now. Cool. Okay, so we want to say if channel ID is in the cache of playlist list, because we're assuming playlist list is always going to be there. That's different than I originally assumed. I was thinking of actually adding them in, at least for the channel information. Self cache playlist list channel ID playlist list channel ID. Returning cache data for playlist. And of course, when it comes down to it, we're going to maybe make these logs better, but the debug logs aren't meant to be there long term. They're just meant to track all this stuff. Before I forget, playlist list is now in the list of things that are cache non grata over in that file, so we don't run into any problems. So if the channel ID is in the playlist list, then if we were asked to refresh, delete just that one, otherwise return that one, and then we can go ahead and grab the results of this. And this is going to be a list of playlists for that, right? Yes, yes, it is. So go up for that one, just to copy what we, just something like yaw, I guess, is what we really need for this one. It doesn't need to be super complicated. Oh, did I do that above? It says it first and caches it last. And then, okay, that makes sense. It says it first, caches it last. So the cache for the playlist list of channel ID is equal to the results, and then we don't need to do that part. That part's automatically done, unless we want to actually cache playlist contents to this one here. But I think we want to maybe do that. Do you want to do that in 2 steps? It's normally how I would do that. I like to work in a very piecemeal, first this, then this, then this kind of matter without mixing too many things all at once. And we can always come back and throw this part in, because playlist contents is going to take a playlist ID. I think we also need to modify this slightly as well when we get to it, because I don't think we want to allow the person to specify what they want. I think when you ask for playlist contents, you get everything, because we're going to aggressively cache the result back. You don't want to run into an idea where the result of the thing is cached when someone asks for little information, and then when you try to get it, it doesn't work. So if we are in playlist list, then cache miss on playlist data, then the cached playlist response. So if we trace through this whole operation, we get a channel ID. We say that we're fetching the contents of the playlist, or getting the playlists for that channel. If that is actually in the cache, then if we were asked to request it to refresh, then throw it away. Otherwise, return the cached value. Either way we log, neither of those, there was a miss in the cache. This channel ID isn't in there yet. No one's asked for it yet for the playlists for that ID. So it actually makes the request. It grabs all the information that it can. This is an example of one of those paged ones that Ashwin was discussing earlier and asking about. 50 is the biggest that this can be. And so again, since we want all of the data all at once to display in the quick panel, why not fewer round trips is probably what we want here for this sort of thing. What's going on over here? All right. I think we are good. Yeah. Okay. It's just downloading some podcasts and such. So it makes the request, says how many it found, it caches them in the playlist list for that channel ID, and says it's good to go. So if things compile, we're always happy. That seems like it might have blown up. No, no. Oh, Issues with copy paste coding. Okay. That seems to have worked. So loaded, launched, fetching channel details, blah de blah de blah, fetching playlists, 4 channel, cache missed on playlist data, found 12, cached playlist response. Cool. And I cancel out this when I open it again. I would have expected it to do it when I hit it. And then it does the same thing again, fetching channel details, it's cached, fetching playlist for channel, cached, good to go. And Ashwin's asking, if the result is cached and used, how would one know if the API would fetch newer results or the same results? That is a question to be answered. Right now, the cache is only persisted in memory for the duration of however long the plugin is loaded. So it constantly gets blasted every time I reload, every time I quit. One of the things that I'd like to do and was planned for tonight, but I don't think we're going to get there, probably going to go a little bit long again tonight, is persisting this information to disk. So across restarts or across reloads, it doesn't have to keep refreshing this all the time. In which case, yeah, how do you know that this would be the case? As far as I know, the only way to know if it's going to return different data is to ask it and see what it gets and then compare, which defeats the whole purpose to begin with. But I'm heavily relying on the fact that right now, everything we're doing, getting channels, getting the list of playlists, getting the list of videos inside of those playlists, getting the details of those videos, those are all things that don't happen very frequently. Very infrequently am I ever going to start another channel, for example. So that's that part. Once you get it, it's pretty much just always going to be the same. What might be different is the description or the title or the information about the statistics of the thing. Um, like view counts and such. Ditto for playlists. Videos only change once a week on the main channel. Contents of descriptions might change. Certainly not while I'm busy doing something else here. So my thought is that a twofold of once every 24 hours refresh it, um, probably as a setting, and a manual YouTube editor flush cache is probably how I would go with this, because I've found that whole, if someone asks, and the reason why I created this partially was for the variability to say get video link and wait for that to pop up and wait for this to pop up so that I could search for how key bindings work, to copy it, to paste it to somebody in the forum when they're asking a question about it, or on Stack Overflow, or in the Discord, or in DMs when people ask me questions, all that kind of stuff. When I can say something like, here's an explanation of this. If you want more details, here's the video. I created this to be able to get at those quicker, because trying to find them in the YouTube channel manager is painful, to say the least. This can download the information in a tenth of the time it takes the browser to even load the YouTube Studio page to begin with. And in that case, I kind of want this to be fairly aggressively cached, so that if I was to quit this and I'm doing something else, and then someone asks a question and I fire up Sublime and hit the hit the thing to say get video list. I mean, obviously, I got to wait for plugins to actually load, that it would just be right there with the list of videos without having to wait that tiny little bit. It's a lot faster now than it was before, because I didn't realize that it was requesting them 5 at a time instead of 50 at a time for like 110 videos. It takes a lot of requests that way. So in that regard, yeah, I'm thinking of being very aggressive with it, having it time itself out, and then I know that if the information in there doesn't seem valid, I can refresh it, but it'll probably happen every couple of days or something. Inside of a session, my guess would be assume that everything that's in here is up to date, and it can update its own cache when we get to the part where it allows you to update data, like update video metadata or update channel metadata as something that happens possibly during Devember, I don't know. Then when the request happens, it could be smart enough to update its cached information for what it fetched last time to have the new information, so it doesn't have to fetch it down again. And then the onus is on you if while you're working on it, you're fiddling around with it in a browser, you need to manually refresh it over here. One of those situations where you can only do so much to help people against themselves, such as it is. So that seems to be working great. It's fetching. Let's try one more time just to be sure. So we go get video link, for example, and it fetches the playlists. That's a cache miss, and then it found 12 and cached it, and here it is. And if I did it again, it fetches the details every time right now because of the thing that we did over there, but it's cached, so that's cool. It's fetching playlists for the channel and returning the cached value. So this is in fact doing what we want to do here. So we'll just go ahead and say we're going to stage this because we added this as a request that is cached in here. Inside of this, we definitely still don't want to check that in. We're still testing this stuff out. And as a matter of fact, we could actually revert this. Well, I mean, not that part, but these lines could be discarded because we don't need to request the channel information every time. We know it works now. We just discard those ones. So the only change we have there is that one, which will make the test that much shorter. So that's good. And here we are adding a new playlist cache item to that inside of, oh, come on, man. Oh, I see. Inside playlist list, cache it, get the data, return it back. That is the business there. And then we would say add ability to cache playlist list information. Yeah. And I will go back and make these readable and explain what's actually going on in there. Okay, so now we're into playlist contents. Absolutely requires a playlist ID. So let's go ahead and do that part right now. We'll grab this out. Playlist ID is equal to that. And then oops, that didn't work. Well, it kind of did, I guess. Not this one, but this one, and that the only one? Yeah, this one's extra gross, if you will. We're gonna hit it with that. Okay, now optionally for full details, we get content details. Otherwise, we get this. Am I actually using this anywhere? I bet I am. But I don't know if I need to. This is the actual thing in networking that we're working on right now on line 415. And in both of the places where we invoke this, we invoke it with true. The difference between full details and not full details is that if you specify full details, it makes one request just for content details, which only gives it information on the video IDs that exist inside of the playlist. And then after it gathers that information, it goes ahead and gathers all of the details for all of the videos in that playlist. So what you get back isn't just a thing that says video ID Bob and video ID Jim. It gives you the actual full information, which is kind of what we want for our purposes here, for the same reason that we're grabbing everything. Once you start looking at the contents of a playlist, you need to know the names of everything that's in it so that you can display it in there and say, this is the title, this is the description, this is the views, this is the likes, blah, blah, blah. Which is why it's always using full details right now. This was envisioned originally to be maybe you don't want the full details of it. Maybe you just want to gather information you care about, in which case it would request this information instead. And this is kind of like doing that. And then I wonder here, ID snippet contents status, ID snippet contents status. Okay, so I think this was a play on what we're planning on doing here, which is if you didn't pass full details and you passed a part of some sort, or it would use this one by default, um, then it tries to get this information for all of the videos inside of the list. But then it always returns all of them, and that might not be necessary, which is why we have the version that does it this way. It's not doing it yet, but what we're about to do is modify this one so that it actually figures out of the videos that are in this, which ones do we actually not have cached versions of, and then fetch those ones. So I think as a part of this, oh yeah, this was the other reason for that. If you do the reason why I wanted to do that was twofold, but also because if you do it this way, content details is supposed to include things like, um, it might not show it in here. Yeah, I think it doesn't because this was gathered the other way. But pardon me, that information that we have on how many uh, likes and dislikes and stuff that a video has is only available in video details. It's not available in this. So we can get some of, but not all of the information that we want in a playlist. And for our purposes here, when we're working with playlists, we want to be able to have a full video information so you don't have to fetch off another request later to get that information, which was less vital until we made the decision that the list of videos, when you look at it, should have the view information. This wouldn't be possible just asking the playlist list method to give us content details for this. This part of it doesn't get extracted out. So we would be looking at having to make another details request just for that, and then trying to conglomerate them into the results that we already have that didn't have that, even though we needed both of them and we could have fetched them in one operation, and it's less work code wise, sort of thing, is the logic that I'm going for there. Um, so we're going to, this returns a list of the videos in the playlist complete with all of their details is what we have here. So we're going to say this. We're going to copy that and we're going to go whoop, whoop. Do I have another one of those down here? I don't, do I? I don't. I think. Yeah. We'll leave that as it is. But we're just going to, we don't even need to say part is this or part is that because we're not allowing you to specify it anymore. And that wasn't actually used in either of these cases, right? ID snippet status statistics, ID snippet status statistics, ID snippet status statistics. Is there a way to have a different key binding attached to a panel item? Example, if I click key binding A, it goes to the video link. If key binding B, it opens the YouTube editor window. I don't think so, because in order to pick an item from the list, it has to go through the quick panel. And the quick panel is going to return the index of the item, but not the key that you used to do it. I suppose in theory, if you had a context that would allow you to know that you were in the quick panel input, you could have a key binding on A and B that sets a setting in the view or in the window and then executes the command that would normally be executed when you pick something, which I think might be select, the command select. And then in the callback, you could examine the window state to see which of the two keys did it. Technically, that might be possible now that you say that. Go to anything input, command palette input. I think one of those two things is input in the quick panel. I seem to recall helping somebody with something on the Discord a little ways back. The person that wanted to have J and K go up and down inside of the quick panel and inside of the command palette, I think. So in that case, yeah, let's test something. Yeah, that's kind of tricky to pull off, isn't it? Because the quick panel closes. There's a select command that, I did this. That command works to trigger items in the command palette, which if I remember correctly, Will said that he added to make it easier to create those animated GIFs that are on the homepage. It's an interesting idea, I will say that. Maybe straightforward, maybe not. It would all rely on finding the thing in the Discord. I mean, chances are good one of the bajillion plugins laying around in my home directory or in my user package is something that does something like that. I should check my key bindings. uh, mark selection, play, MIDI file. Key bindings for sub CSS. That's the thing that Michael Lyons was asking about. I added a key to copy as HTML. I'm guessing, yeah, if it was still in here, it would be up near the top. So probably not. This little Scope Navigate plugin was like totally handy earlier today. I was working with some XML files in a new process that needs to process them, but the only samples they had to give me are files that their current thing knows how to handle, and the current thing is running in VMS, written in Fortran, and I think either something to do with VMS and or Fortran makes it problematic to stream content of a file. And because this file was one big long line that was 1.8 meg, they couldn't load that one line into memory because it kept causing problems. So they had somebody write a little VMS equivalent of a shell script, basically, that takes the file, input file, and breaks it into 512 byte chunks, one line per, and add a new line. And then the last line was padded out with a bunch of null bytes to make it that big. Those are the only files they had, and whatever wrote that thing wrote it such that sometimes a trailing white space on the end would remain, and sometimes it would be clobbered. So just grabbing all the lines and sticking them together ended you up with something broken because it might have lost the space between the name of a tag and the name of an attribute. So what I did was use that scope navigation command that I created a ways back for somebody that wanted to was asking something in the forum, Lasminda, I think, to look for invalid scope so I could load up the file after it had been expanded and find all of the broken places and fix them. Turned out that they were all in the same general type of part of the file, which made a find and replace easy to fix it, but you really can't underestimate how much better your life can be when you're fiddling around with stuff like that. Okay, before we proceed with this, when we do get video link or this, we ask playlist contents to give us full details, and we ask for ID snippet, status, and statistics. And here, if we did full details, which is what that's doing, then the part that's provided is used down here where it's getting ID, snippet, content details, and status. So that's unfortunate because this is a different list of things that it's technically asking for in this case than what would have otherwise been the default. Which inherently isn't bad. The reason that this is happening is because this is all of the information necessary to display this. When we pick one of these things, to know that this is the title and this is the views and this is the likes and this is the dislikes and stuff. But it doesn't gather other information like the content details, which would include, it has these snippets, so it has this information with the title and the description. But content details, all of this stuff wouldn't be in there. The statistics we definitely need in there. Sort of a subset of all of these things. Some of those it doesn't need until it goes into the edit details thing, in which case that makes another request. But what we're trying to do is short circuit that by having all that information be cached here. So I think what we need is for this ID snippet status. Well, we'll just add content details into here. So it looks a little bit like yaw. And then we further say, yeah, we don't actually want that. Yeah, okay. We actually want this. And then later on, when we cache this information, it'll all be good to go. And presumably, that's not the end of the world for that particular operation. We haven't really done too much here, so let's just see, relatively speaking. If we pick this, 1, 2, 3, 4. Slightly slower, I suppose. But again, this is one of those ideas where if this is fairly aggressively cached or at least persisted and updated like once an hour or something, then front loading these requests in a basket, for my money, makes more sense because making a lot of back and forth requests can incur a hell of a time penalty just in the overhead of building up the TCP connection, making the connection to the server, and waiting for the results to come back, as opposed to being able to create one request that does 100 things instead, or I guess 50 things in this case, instead of 5, 5, 5, 5, or 100 things, but now we want a little bit more information than we got the first time. It's death by 1,000 cuts, basically. So we're verifying that. We're going to say that this is always request full details. So we're going to do this first. Part is content details. We already did that. We'll leave this here because we might care about it later. I doubt it. I think, yeah. These things refer to, I'm guessing, let's test. Let's not guess, let's test. If we searched for playlist items for a specific playlist ID, which, whoops, don't do that. Say we search for this one, let's say. We'll copy that. We'll jump over here and we can actually verify this bad boy. So we're looking at playlists, list, try this API, zoom it out. If the part was just, what did we have in there? Just content details. And the ID we wanted is this one. And max results is 50, let's say. Well, yeah, let's do one. We don't need to see, well, we'll do two, then we can verify that we're seeing a list of things. Google, Google, Google. Google, Google, Google. Here we go. So let's see. This one. And then, Yoop. So, kind of wish that that was a little smarter. What we end up with is just the count of things that are inside the playlist. If we actually search this for that ID. Let's double check what we're doing here. Oh, I did the wrong one. I wanted playlist items. No, okay, that would explain some stuff. I'm like, this does not seem like it's doing the correct thing. Is there another one of those? Yeah, sorry. My bad. I meant to click on this one. Okay, let's try that again, shall we? I'll just re-authenticate because it's been 10 seconds. If this was just content details for two things, the playlist with this ID. Oh, sorry. The playlist with this ID, I believe, is how that works. And go. Yeah, I'll authorize it again. It's been 15 seconds since the last time I clicked these buttons. So content details is just the video ID and when it was published at, and that's the only thing we get if we do content details. And then what this is going to do after it gets all of that is, I mean, previously it only used to do it sometimes, but we're going to call the get video details for these video IDs and get the ID, the snippet, the status, the statistics, and the content details. Where previously, if we looked up here, but not in that spot, is it around here somewhere? No. Up here somewhere? Well, maybe I should just do this, huh? If we weren't doing that, we would be doing it this way instead, which is not something that's happening right now, but just to see what the result of this would be. If we plonked that information in there, then when we hit this, oh, it's mad. Unknown part. Oh, whoops. Now we get the title of the video and the description of the video, thumbnails, what the video ID is inside the resource, and then that's it. We get to know that it's public, but you notice that we don't get to know information about the view count and such. That is in one of these other items here. That's in statistics, but statistics isn't one of the things I don't think that you can include in this request. Which is why that is working the way that it is, if I'm remembering this correctly. Yeah. Statistics unknown parameter. So we want that information to be able to have the full information on this thing. We can't sort of go through that particular thing. Okay. Let's go ahead and toggle all these things closed again. There's probably an easier way to do that, huh? Actually, that did not do as much as I thought it might. You just go away, my friend. Why will you not go away, my friend? There we go. Okay, so we're gonna get just that, and oh, that's not cool. There we go. Then it's gonna grab all the information. Then, if we're doing full details, no, my friend, we are doing full details. So that's gonna go away, and then all of this stuff is gonna go boop, like this. So on the face of it, this should have no effect on anything except that those calls are passing arguments that make no sense. So, well, they don't actually do anything. So uploaded video still says 99. I can still look inside the list. I guess it's slightly slower than it was before to be able to grab extra information we're going to want later. But everything still works just fine. See, that takes a little bit of time, and boop. So that part still works, which means playlist contents doesn't need to pass part or full details because those are all hard coded in that location and in this one too. It now just does this without us having to do this. I should have known. One too many. Good. Okay, so that part all is doing kind of what we would expect. Now comes the tricky part. We still have a half hour of stream here, at least. I think I can manage to go that long. Coffee's running out though. Everything still seems to be cool over here. In our status view, yes, it does. Good. So the next thing is we're going to need to cache the results of this in the same way that this is doing. So we might end up doing the same. Well, no, we don't want to. We don't want to do that. Here we go. Here's what we say. We remember all of our myriad changes. Video details is this. Okay, and that is the information on fetched videos. This object is keyed on video IDs with the value being the details of that particular video. Sensical? Okay. Now, let's get dangerous. Oh, wait. It's been a while since we did this, but we're having success. We've been wrenching on this thing for 2.5 hours, and it still returns results. I have extra stuff to add to that, like some fireworks and such, but so far so good. Okay. What's the thing we're working on here? This part needs to be cached first, doesn't it? This part needs to be cached first. I guess that might be the better way to go, and then worry about the other part second. Sound mixing is good. Is that your way of saying that that particular sound is a higher volume than my voice and everything else? Because it seems to be okay in my ears, but then so does the monitor of the headset, which was apparently quiet. So it seemed okay. I should try it on another computer than just the couple that I have. Incidentally, these headsets have ridiculous volume if you just use them as a regular headset plugged into a headphone jack. I almost blew my head off editing my video this week. Uh, uh, uh. Ironically, though, I do have a mixer on the table down here and another one over there, both with the sorts of things that with audio effects that would allow me to make myself sound like I'm more echoey and so forth. I think, yeah, what is it we're actually editing here? Playlist contents is the thing we're noodling. Playlist contents is going to be keyed by an ID. Yeah, okay. We might have jumped the gun on this thing. So let's see. Contents of fetched playlists. Yay, it was the same volume as my voice. Whoop, whoop. I did a thing. It was playing with volume filters that made the new version of OBS segfault on me for the first time, but I really think I didn't have time to really chase it down earlier. I think it has something to do with the browser source thing. I don't think they fully resolved their issue with having Qt and GTK both have weird dialogue state in some fashion that's shared in the core. I can't remember the details of the thing. It seemed like the ultimate fix was to just choose one of the two and use that everywhere, and everything else uses GTK except for OBS that uses Qt. But they didn't like what the GTK file dialog looked like, so they decided not to. Come to think of it, that might be the reason why I noticed options in there that didn't seem to exist otherwise. This object is keyed on playlist IDs with the value being a list of the playlist contents. That seems like what we want. Okay. Now, we're going to probably want a little something like yaw or more. Yeah, that seems cool. So if playlist ID is in, oops, this isn't BI, is in the cache for playlist contents. If we were clearing, okay, boop. Clearing playlist contents cache. There may be some cache clearing going on here. Oh, Ben says, another good news, Firefox is supporting hardware acceleration on GNOME now. Woo! I haven't used Firefox in a while, ever since they reintroduced the bug where it wouldn't render the screen unless you were driving their event loop by wiggling your mouse on the screen. And yeah, it was like a bad scene. Whoops. I'm a professional drinker. I've been doing it for many years. Smooth. I'm kind of surprised that it doesn't already support hardware acceleration. Is it specifically not working in X11, but it has like Wayland acceleration or something? I don't like the way that I just discovered a potential bug. Playlist contents. Returning cached data. Yeah, and working but disabled by default. Huh. One of those sorts of things. That's cool. You ever know, I keep getting notifications for, hey, check out this new thing Chrome can do. And you're like, ooh, that's cool. And then it says, this is actually in Chrome Canary and it's not enabled yet. But if you were to install a development build and then go into the flags and flip these 19 things this way, you could test this out. And I'm like, stop telling me about it unless I can do it now. Whoa, what I'm really looking forward to is hardware accelerated video decoding, especially for the Pine phone. Not gonna lie, I'm kind of jelly of your Pine phone action. And not just because you can run Sublime on it either. I remember one time, must have been a couple of years ago now, had just finished an update and a release to override audit and pushed it up. And then the next day, I was on the SkyTrain heading downtown to go to the dentist, and Keith was talking to me in the private in the DM in Discord in private, uh, mentioning how something didn't seem to be working quite right for him, and I could swear that I had fixed that particular problem, and it bothered me so much that I thought I had fixed it, and I really hadn't. That I used an app on my phone to SSH into my home computer and run VI on my phone screen to be able to page through the code to look at it. And then eventually we found out that the reason why it wasn't working, and it was an easy enough, I can't remember if it was actually a code problem or not, but uh, I don't recommend using VI on a phone screen that's about, you know, yaw big. In fact, I don't even think it was this phone at the time. I think it was an even smaller one than that, because that's a Pixel 3. And previously it was not. But okay, we're asking for information for playlist ID and playlist contents. Delete it. I don't think that's a correct to delete. I think our cache refreshing is broken. No. Ooh. What frame rate was it running at before? I'm assuming that it wasn't at 60 frames per second and you wanted it to be more choppy. What resolution is the camera in that anyway? Is it like a full one of those like 10 megapixel jobbies? Making me think fondly back to 2002 when I got the Fuji FinePix 2600, and it was like a 1 or 2 megapixel camera and it cost $500, and it was so exciting to have that much digital power. And now my phone has more, like 10 times more resolution than that. 2 frames per second. That is quite the speed upgrade. Wow. Are Pine phones like a production phone, or are they new enough that they're sort of meant for hacking on like you're doing? Um, okay. I'm just remembering something that we want to do here, which is this. After those results, we want a little bit of this, but we want this to be playlist contents because that's what we're fiddling with here, right? Is equal to for the playlist ID is equal to those results. And I don't think that that's necessarily, this one's a tricky one. I don't know that we necessarily want to cache this part here. I think we want to wait for this part. Yeah, I think, because if we cache it here, what we're caching is the empty response, and then that's what it'll return back later. But we actually want it to be here, like this, so that it does it after the big lookup, if you will. So let's see what that does for us. Whoops. I went the wrong way with that one. I was expecting the other one to be on the top there. Okay. And oh wow, man, that's a lot of stuff. Fetching playlist contents for this cache miss contains 109 items. Fetching details. Cached playlist response. Okay, cool. And then fetching channel details, return cache data. Fetching playlist for channel, return cache data. Wasn't that supposed to return? Did I not? Let's name this playlist data. Ben says it's a kind of crappy 5 megapixel rear camera, supports 720p 60 on the hardware. Drivers are currently arbitrarily limited to 720p 30. Images are captured at RAW. That's not too shabby. It being RAW, that is. It's one of those like weird situations how drivers fall back to stuff. And the Pine phone itself is definitely a device only for those willing to hack on it, but the hardware itself is very solid. Build quality wise, it's actually a little better than my Fair phone. Interesting. I've had getting myself some Raspberry Pis and Arduinos on my list of I should do that for a really long time now. Though of course, I guess it's not visible right now. I guess it kind of is. Right up there is. Oh, actually, I suppose I could just do this. You can see the electric guitar right there. I have all the stuff I need to rewire that and put in a new pickup selector that has way more combinations. So instead of being neck, all three of them in neck bridge, I can have bridge, middle, neck, and then bridge, neck, bridge, middle, and middle neck to have all the possible things. And all of the stuff required for doing said operation. And it's been on my to-do list for quite some time. So, too many things to play with and not enough time to play with them. And speaking of, we're getting perilously close to 3 hours here. So let's give this a test. We may need to call it before we get all the way to the end here. So we're going to say get video. We'll use the other one. It's a little faster. So let's see. It got the thread. Fetching playlist for channel. Cache miss on playlist data. Okay, so that, whoops, that is just the list of playlists that exist. We haven't actually got any playlist contents yet. So let's say we pick override audit. So that's that playlist, cache miss on that, 3 items, and then we get the answer. And then we go back, whoops, I clicked that too many times. And now, come on, bro. If we went to it again, really? Oh, come on, come on, come on, come on. This. Since you're here, Ben, what does it mean when it says quick panel unavailable? Because I've been seeing that a fair bit, and I don't know if it means I'm trying to open the quick panel while it's already open. It always seems to appear where I expect it to appear, but it's something that I've just noticed recently. It's curious. I assume it's not new. Probably I've just been doing so much stuff with the quick panel lately that I'm actually actively looking in the console more. I think we need to do that again. Somehow the results of that have been cached in such a way that it doesn't actually need to do anything. I don't buy that. Get link. It found 12 playlists. Go into this. Fetching playlist contents for this. There was a miss. It got 3 items and it's done. And then we go up 1 level. Go into plugin 101. And it fetching it. There's a miss. 18 items. Good. We go back up 1. We go into override audit. And it's not saying anything here. That might be because it's already gathered that information and it's stashing it in a closure. But if I quit and restart the command, it does all of that stuff again. And then I pick this. That is a curious concept. I'm not sure why that is doing that. I'm going to have to investigate that a little bit. But I don't think I want to do that now. What do we got? Yeah. We'd really have to trace through that and see. It happens when the quick panel is already open. Huh. Interesting. In all the cases that I've seen it, I've, done something like yaw or, navigated around, and this is all just separate invocations of this. I wonder what I'm doing to try to make it appear when it's already, because it always seems to do what I expect it to do, kind of thing. Unlike this thing. Get video link. Is that the thing we're doing here? Yes. We're calling playlist contents. When you pick a playlist, it asks for playlist contents. Okay. Pick playlist happens in a couple of places. That's going to be this one. Oh, nope, sorry, it's not. when you enter authorizing, it causes it to get the channel list, which causes it to either get the list of playlists or show you implicitly that one. But we're doing this one because that thing is hard coded. So it's asking for the list of playlists for a specific channel. When that isn't finished being invoked, it calls this one, which gets the list of playlists and calls select playlist, calling pick playlist when it's done. And if you pick one, it calls playlist contents. It makes that request, which is this one, where if you're using tags, it does that to ask you about the tags first, and then it asks you about the other thing later. Otherwise, it gets the list of videos and sorts it. So where it calls pick playlist is where it calls playlist contents. So picking a playlist should invoke playlist contents in here. But it doesn't say fetching contents for playlist when I do that. Well, I mean, there it did, but I had a bunch of tests running there. When that gets logged, the whole show quick panel API call is ignored. It's good to know. I'm gonna pay more attention to when that actually pops up and see if I can narrow it down. I wonder if I assume it's something that I'm doing, but I mean, I don't have that many plugins actually installed. Oh, I should do this so we can see more stuff. Okay, it got the playlists for channel, so it found 12 playlists. So it knows what the playlists are and how many items they have, but it doesn't have any information on anything inside of them. So if I pick override audit, it says it's fetching the playlist contents for that. There was a miss. It had 3 items. It cached it. It returns back. Then I do it again. Fetches details, cached, fetches playlist, cached. What we expect. We pick override audit. Somehow, it doesn't have to do that part. There's no path through this where it doesn't log that it did a thing. But you know what? If we weren't complete and utter idiots, we might stop it from being cached at the outer point so that it actually gets all the way in here. That's a great opportunity to pull this one out. The sound cue doesn't line up on that one, does it? I don't think it does. Whoops, pardon me. Okay, I think we're going to get a result that we expect now. Or alternatively, it's going to explode in a spectacular fashion. Let's see which one it is. Shoot, I'm going to reload that because I want to see the whole thing in here. Okay, we're going to get a video link. Bloop, 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 and then we say, hey, neat, override audit is what we want. Fetches the contents. There's a miss. It's got 3 items. It's good. And then we go back. And then we pick override audit again. And then it fetches it, but it's cached. The difference between these two caching mechanisms is the network manager, if you make the exact same request, would just return the results that you returned last time, so it never gets as far as this. Now it's getting into this thing and then just returning the same data back, but we have more control over stuff. Double thumbs up on sound cue. Cool, cool, cool. Still want to make those, slightly cooler, but time being what it is. Side projects and tasks expand to fill any available time. If I pick a different playlist, like plugin 101, then it actually has to return that information. And then if I do it again, it doesn't. So in that regard, it is caching the data the way that we expect it to, which is good. We still have more to do on this thing. In particular, which is kind of a twofer, and maybe we do a different one first and then cycle back to this one, because video details is going to make a request to get snippet content details, statistics, and status for something, which is those, but we also need a little bit more in there. for a specific video ID, and it's going to cache that in the video details part of the list and be done with it. So I think we need to do this part first, and then we'll cycle back to this one so that after it gets the list of contents, instead of doing this, it's going to take this list and compare it against the set of keys that are cached for video details, remove those ones away, and then only make requests for ones that it doesn't have already. And it'll use those to inject into the cache. And we want to do this one first, I think, because we're going to need to hoist some of the code out of here into a helper so that this one can do the exact same thing. Or modify this, and I don't think we want to do that. Um, Modify video details to take a list of videos and have it do that. One of those two things, I think. But we're going to go ahead and call now because that's like 3 hours, and I still need to finish up this commit and rewrite all of the other commit messages and push them up. Thankfully, no sound log queue for tonight. So thanks for showing up. We had a good time fixing data stuff. Uh, Querying Ben about his phone and talking about rocket games and such. It's cool. This reminds me actually of back when I worked in an office with my one coworker that lives in the same part of the country as me, and we were able to work on stuff and still be able to have a little bit of discourse back and forth, which now is entirely text-based in Mattermost and doesn't quite have the same panache. So thanks everybody for coming out. We're going to be doing another live stream on Thursday, same time, 8 p.m. Pacific, whatever that time is in your local time zone. Use the buttons down below to thumb subscribe and share. Ring the bell notification icon, and YouTube will tell you that I'm going live with a half an hour head start. And you can also follow me on Twitter at ODATNerd to get the same information as well. And until tomorrow's devlog video uploaded here, not live, unless I happen to have a bunch of free time tomorrow to actually jump into another stream. This is ODATNerd asking you to please have a sublime day and night and the rest of your year. All the things. Be sublime, people. Be sublime.